Hello and welcome to Rewind Reviews, a podcast where we often review movies from our past. We have some nostalgia for, not always, but sometimes that's what we do. This week we're jumping a little bit closer to the modern times than we usually do. We're looking at a movie called Crazy Stupid Love that was most categorically, most absolutely, most definitely written by a man.
Yep. You know what, Dan?
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes films don't hold up. And sometimes you find yourself watching a movie you chose going, huh. Now I still stand by the logic. The logic was I wanted to do a little role reversal. I wanted a film that I knew you hadn't seen.
Yes.
And I knew I had.
Yeah. Oh god, this chair has just decided to start going.
Yeah, I was going to say, Are you strangling Walt, your cat? What's going on?
No, I'm going to have to oil this chair at some point, but yeah, it stopped doing it now. That was weird.
Right.
Because when you're talking, Chris, you know, sometimes I sort of lightly swing back and forth on this chair when I'm in this chair because it's I'm like being rocked to sleep while listening to your dulcet tones.
Weird way of phrasing masturbate, but all right, yeah, you rock back and forth on the chair.
Oh, we had our explicit tag early this week. Good.
No, so I still made, and also it's the second half of the story. As listeners will know, a few I don't know, episodes ago, years ago, whatever, we did all about Steve, which was a film I ended up watching on a Valentine's date when I had this on me, but this disc wouldn't play. I do think that I'll say it now. I do think this is a better movie than All About Steve.
Oh yes,
yeah.
I don't even think that, like, in terms of how this movie is put together, this is a bad movie. But it's a movie with some issues in terms of its messaging that we're going to come to. All About Steve.
Yes,
All About Steve. It looks like we covered in 2021. So it's been been at least.
So
a year.
I am oddly nostalgic for this movie, but it's definitely a movie that when you watch through the prism of I'm about to review this, you go, this does have some issues. It's still got some standout scenes. It's definitely got some standout performances. And it's still got some funny stuff in it, but it's also definitely got its issues. So obviously, yeah.
Well, just because, I mean, I think I really struggled with this one because I still don't 100% know where I lean because I think this movie does have a lot of qualities that I like about it. I like the way the plots converge. I think that's clever structurally. I like the way the plot actually unfolds throughout the film as well. I think it has a really good, not just sense of pace, but also sense of storytelling in that, like, every event that occurs leads us into the next one as a cause and effect sort of situation. It's not a just, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. It's not a random sequence of events. Every choice has a consequence in the narrative of the film, right? And I think so few films have that. So it's got a really good structure. I think it's got a really interesting premise at its core as well. And I think all the characters are reasonably well realised. And actually, even the characters that don't get a huge amount of screen time are more complex than a movie like this would normally give them, right? I also think that it is occasionally extremely funny. So there are a lot of really good qualities about this movie. And I would actually say, like, were it not for a few really, really significant issues, this would be an easy recommend for me, I think. But it is also deeply flawed in a few different ways. Mostly, I think, around the messaging, which is muddled. One of the most insane story decisions ever. There's a quote unquote conclusion to one of the storylines in this movie that is one of the most shocking things I've ever seen put into film. We'll come to it. It's just absolutely insane. I can't believe this got through any approval process whatsoever. We'll come to it. It's the characters that really deserve to learn a lesson here don't, as far as I can tell. And that is a problem for the movie because I wrote a note halfway through the movie and I said, this movie, in a modern context, rides such a thin line. Several of the characters are behaving appallingly, and you watch the entire movie wondering if they'll have learned the error of their ways by the end, or if the movie will condemn their actions or not. My enjoyment of the movie may very well hinge on where this lands. And then, subsequent to that, I wrote a note right at the end that says, I'm not sure finding something better is the same as seeing the error of your ways.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
The characters in this movie behave appallingly and never really atone for that. And I think it leaves a bad taste in your mouth because you start to wonder if the writer is a sexist. Now, I don't think the writer is a sexist. The writer has gone on to work on other things that I have liked and have had a really good, positive message. But the objectification of women is never really atoned for in this movie. And while there are many scenes that are good and funny and clever and all the things that I like about writing, I need Nadia just keeps sending me TikToks, so my phone keeps buzzing. I am sorry. I'm gonna put it on Do Not Disturb. I've really lost my train of thought there. What was I saying? Who knows?
It's treatment of women. Well,
I'll
jump in there because
the objectification of women is a real recurring theme in this movie, and I think that the movie never really atones for it. And I don't know. I think he was trying to make a point against that, but the movie isn't emphatic enough at that point. That's where I land is like on a real like I'm not sure I could recommend this movie, even though many of the things in it are good, well written, well realized. The really important one, which is the messaging in a movie like this, is fumbled, and as a result, I don't know if I can. I've yet to decide.
Even the nuances of like, and this is, and I'll do my recommend, and then we'll go full on spoilers because I think if part of you is tempted to watch this, it's a comedy with Steve Carell, Emma Stone, Ryan Gosling, Julianne Moore. It's a good cast. Dan Fogelman, writer of This Is Us, has written it. So if that enough makes you go, oh, I want to check it out, then you should absolutely stop listening, check it out, come back. This happens in the first like 10 minutes, so I don't feel this is heavy kind of spoiler territory. Julianne Moore's character wants a divorce from Steve Carell, and has slept with someone else. Now, even in the handling of that, it's like what the film, in terms of that atonement and treatment of women, what like Julianne Moore's character kind of arguably more than any other character atones for their actions, but not for the one, like she doesn't seem, it's like the movie goes, oh no, her mistake was wanting a divorce from Steve Carell. Her mistake was saying she wanted to leave the man. She doesn't atone for the affair. The affair isn't the mistake she suffers from. It feels like the thing she suffers for is leaving the man. Like, and that's kind of just an example of this sort of odd treatment of women throughout this film. And I think, unfortunately, whilst it is funny, whilst it is well structured, whilst I think there are twists and turns that some wouldn't see coming, I think, unfortunately, actually its treatment of women is just too big a thing to get past. So I would also, if you're a huge fan of rom-coms, or This Is Us maybe, not because that's not got the same heart as This Is Us. If you're a huge fan of rom-coms and those actors, check it out, but I can't recommend it either.
I would also say if you like This Is Us, but are not too into the schmaltzy side of This Is Us, but kind of enjoy that, like that show's weird sort of approach to storytelling, that structure.
Yeah, and
because there are elements of This Is Us in this that aren't just the sort of schmaltzy family stuff, but it's also like
and I'd include in that some of the humour. Like Randall in particular in This Is Us is a character that will do like lots of like side jokes, and you get that here. So here's an example. There's a scene where Steve Carell's character is in a bar, and he annoys the waitress, and he kind of gets the drink, and he says, well, she's probably spat in that, so I'm not going to drink that. And then the scene continues. It's actually a really good scene. Ryan Gosling and Steve Carell are on really good form in that scene. And then at the very end of the scene, Steve Carell does the shot, and he just goes, yep, definitely spat in that. Like, and you've forgotten about that. And that's a very This Is Us style joke.
Yeah.
And I think the movie is littered with them.
Yeah, I think so, and I do think the movie is funny in quite a few different places, and I think, again, that sort of This Is Us plots colliding in ways that are unexpected. That is also a quality of This Is Us that is present here, I think. So yeah, I do think if you're like This Is Us, even though this doesn't do the exact same thing, there are elements of things that work about This Is Us.
Yeah,
glimmering through the rest of this movie.
So that's our sort of recommend. So now,
have we actually said? I think I'm gonna have to land on not recommend. I think I'm gonna have to land on not.
Yeah,
recommend.
no, that's where I think. Yeah, if when we may change our mind, but I don't think we can. We gotta go full spoilers to discuss. So just in case there is anyone listening for that, but tempted to check it out based on what we've just said about the humour and the This Is Us of it all. We may change our minds, but I can't see us getting past this film's treatment of women, to be honest with you. No. And its treatment of women is not very good.
No, it's not good. So yeah, I'm gonna land on not recommend. I think Chris is leading the same way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So okay, let's break it down more specifically then. I mean, I tell you what, let's start with it. Let's start with a couple before we get into the real nitty gritty of the treatment of women issues and some of the details about how the plot unfolds. Let's do a couple of compliments. I think the visuals are pretty good in this movie. I know that they're often a bit on the nose, but I think they work pretty well. Like all the shots of like straight away, the movie opens and it's all these feet of couples under the table that are really like interacting with each other, are close, suggesting relationships, and then we get to the cold hard, difficulties of the relationship that was the focus of this movie, and they're far apart and stiff and not comfortable, and it's just clear that something is wrong before you even see the couple above the table itself. You know something's wrong. It's again a bit on the nose, but like the picture falling over, cracking at the moment that they say that they're breaking up, like things like that are like they, again on the nose, but I think they work pretty well. So yeah, I think the visuals in this movie are generally speaking pretty good. Like the choice to do a bunch of film homages as well, like the Mrs. Robinson thing with the leg up when he's sleeping with Marissa Tomei's character. That's pretty fun as a visual. I like the way they echo some of the shots from Dirty Dancing when they do that scene. The choice to like pull the camera right outside of the apartment. There's some fun. I was pleasantly surprised with the filmmaking, because it would be so easy to get like a jobbing director to come in and direct a script like this who just shoots it in a really generic, boring way. And I think there is a lot of pretty standard shot, reverse shot sort of stuff in here. But I think they, whenever they get the opportunity to do something a bit more creative with the camera, they do. So I would say for a rom-com, they put fractionally more effort into the visuals than is usually done, and that is worth complimenting, I think.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
We already talked about it. The comedy is good. There's the scene that made me chuckle the most is when someone at his work has heard him crying in the bathroom, and everyone in the office has assumed that it's cancer. So they come in and they're being really nice to him, and he's like, "Have you heard?" And the guy's like, well, someone heard you crying in the bathroom. He's like, "Yeah, it's a divorce." And they're like, "Oh, it's just a divorce. You're not dying." And as he's leaving, the guy yells it out to the whole office. It could have been cancer. It's just a divorce, everybody. And everyone's like clapping and cheering. Like that made me laugh quite a lot. I thought that was a very funny idea for a scene. So yeah, I think it is funny. I do think it is funny.
For me, my single favorite, and we'll probably talk about this scene in more detail. The scene that I love and consistently makes me laugh. There's so many little moments in it, and like I say, we'll probably come back to this scene. Is the scene where all the plots truly merge and culminate in the garden fight. But for me, the moment that gets me is Ryan Gosling's character realizing it's David, whatever his name is, Longerharden, and just the way he goes,
Lefhagen or something like that. Yeah, I'll pull it up.
And it's just the way he goes. Right, takes off his ring and goes over to punch him because.
So it's David Lindhagen. But that's actually go on. Now I'll let you finish your point, because that actually spins off into my next compliment of a thing I liked about the movie. But go on, I'll finish your point about that. It's a good moment.
It just makes me laugh so much, and it just the notion of no matter what else is going on, actually this guy caused his friend some harm, so he's gonna punch him in the face, and it's just Ryan Gosling's acting as he goes. Well, like just this kind of, I'm punching you in the face. It just really, and then that whole scene in general, like when get off of my daughter, get off of my daughter. And then just Kevin Bacon, David Lindelof's character, just going, I don't know what's happening. But like, and then in the middle of it, Ryan Gosling's like, where are you punching? Like, yeah, that, I mean, I think we need to, in general, talk about that scene for a few reasons. But yeah, that moment makes me laugh and entertains me every time I've seen this movie.
Yeah, and I will say the reason that spins off into my next compliment, if we're just getting some compliments in first before we talk about all the problematic stuff, because I feel like we should do some positivity. We reviewed all the fucking Harry Potter films recently. We've done enough negativity. Let's get some positivity in while we can. I think the characterization of these people is extraordinarily well realized for a movie of this nature. Ryan Gosling's character, who is ultimately, really, strictly speaking, a plot device in the movie for most part, right? He's a plot device to thrust Steve Carell's character Cal into various situations. I think that is his function in the script. Yet his characterization, generally speaking, with one exception, which we'll come to, is really, really strong, and I was surprised at that. Like the fact that. Because there were points in the movie where I was questioning, is he his friend or is he just like a project? That moment when he defends him, the minute David Lindhagen shows up and he just like immediately is like, right, we're going. He hurt my buddy. And he like punches him. I was like, oh, that's really clever, because I spent the whole movie wondering what his motives were with Cal. And now I know they are really genuinely friends. And it's the right moment for us to learn that too, because it's the moment their relationship is most tested in that scene. But also, the song
in general, like you say, the characters and the acting of those, like that scene between Ryan Gosling and Steve Carell in the bar, like after that moment, is legitimately just two actors, delivering some of their, maybe not their finest work, but just delivering great work and bouncing off of each other. Like I remember watching that scene on this rewatch, going, this is really good acting in this scene. It's equally Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling sort of falling in love with each other over the course of that evening. Like, they really do capture, what it's like to have those getting to know you periods when you start falling for someone. And that, that montage and the way the characters are realised in those scenes of them talking and stuff is really strong. Like the performances and the chemistry across the board is really, really strong in this movie and holds a lot of it up. Like the actors are delivering a lot of charm that I think, despite the issues, because one of the reasons we struggled with recommend or not recommend is because the film's got a lot of issues. But that doesn't mean it's not entertaining. And I think one of the reasons it's most entertaining is the character work and the acting that's going into that character work.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think particularly as well, I found the son really interesting, Robbie, because so I was talking about this with Nadia. It's funny, we didn't watch this movie together, but we did both watch the movie because I put it on as Nadia was leaving for some reason. I can't remember. She was going out of the house. So she sort of passed and heard a moment of the movie. I was like, oh, this sounds fun. What's this movie called? And she was going to be at home alone that night because I was working that evening. And she said, like, oh, is it on the hard drive? Can I just watch this? And I was like, yeah, if you want to watch it, you can watch it. So she watched it separate to me. And she found Robbie, I think it's Jacob, that's Ryan Gosling's character, Robbie, to be like really weird and like weirdly into his parents' relationship. She couldn't get past it. She was like, what a little crazy kid this kid is. He's like so weirdly obsessed with his parents' marriage. I felt a different way with it, which is I actually thought that was really clever, because what they do is his worldview is that soulmates exist. And he's gotten and grown up with that worldview, believing that in his parents. So his parents divorcing is like having your entire worldview torn down to him. It's like someone proving there isn't a God if you're a person of Christian faith. Like he's dedicated, short, admittedly, but his whole life to this notion. He's believed that truly and utterly. And to have that torn down actually explains a lot of his behavior in this movie. And I found that weirdly, not maybe realistic, because I don't know how many kids feel the way he does, but the movie addresses that too, that he's not exactly, he doesn't normally behave like, even prior to the divorce, he wasn't exactly a normal kid, but I thought that was really, for a character that, again, only kind of exists to push the plot forward in many ways. A lot of a lot of thought put into that character's behaviors and choices that made him feel authentic in a way that I'm surprised. If you'd have pitched me his character arc in, like a logline type way, like just in a short sort of sentence or two, what he goes through across the movie, I'd have been like, I don't know if I buy that. But in execution, they do just enough to make you believe it and actually find him quite compelling. I was surprised. And also, for a kid actor, I thought he did a pretty good job, mostly. There's one or two scenes where he like veers into weirdness, staring and stuff, but I think that's maybe an intentional choice. But so yeah, I think
that's the directing more than him.
Yeah, considering the relative sort of like minor of a character he is in the movie, the thought that was put into his arc is surprising. But Chris, if you're done with compliments, it does lead into my issue because
I want to know who's the character that's not realised for you.
Pretty much anyone without a penis. That's my issue. I think Cal is really well realised. I think Jacob is really well realised. I think Robbie is really well realised. There's a daughter called Molly who says 2 words in the movie. I don't think Hannah is particularly well realised outside of doesn't want anything to do with Ryan Gosling. But then turns out her quote-unquote nice boyfriend is a dick. So, but he isn't, but is a dick. So she's gonna sleep with Ryan Gosling now. Cool. Oh, Julianne Moore's character, Emily, who is just, was not happy in a relationship. Is there anything more complex to what her character wants and thinks? No. Why would there be? They're all one note. What about Leo Tipton's Jessica character? Is she complex? She gets a lot of screen time in this movie. What's her thing? She loves Steve Carell's character because all the women exist to love the men. Yeah.
Because my memory...
What the fuck?
My memory of her character was... I referenced last week... There's a really weird, like, something that just doesn't hold up that is going to be fucking weird, like akin to some of the stuff in Hook. Now, my memory was that the ending of that plot was fucking bizarre and mental. No, turns out that's me misremembering it. Every element of that plot is handled appallingly, uncomfortably, and just like, ugh, like, it's not good. Like, none of it is.
Yeah. So, in short...
To clarify,
every character without a penis is deeply underserved in this movie.
And just quickly, to clarify, I absolutely agree with that. In case anyone's going, but you complimented the Hannah element of it. I complimented a very specific scene where I think Hannah is incredibly well realised because of her and Ryan Gosling's chemistry and the way that scene is cut and written to show the notion of a couple. You what? Sorry.
I was just thinking they did hit on that in this movie, didn't they? There's two of the directors saw this movie and went, "Yeah, I'm doing that."
Yeah, and it is, and that scene in particular, like they literally, that scene is one of the best representations of that. I want to find out everything about you stage of falling for someone. But otherwise, Dan's absolutely right. Let's talk about Hannah because Hannah also links into something I can't believe it's taken us 25 minutes to get to. Because you're absolutely right on the Hannah of it all. Like, it's literally, oh no, I've got my life and I've got a boyfriend. Oh, he's a bit shit. Okay. And it's all about, the big headline issue is what you've just said. All of the women's actions in this movie are defined by how they feel about the men and what they want from the men. Mm-hmm. And it's just not good. But also the other thing with the Hannah of it all is because I don't want to cross subjects, but I'm not 100%. Some elements of the structure actually bother me a little bit because I think the film is well structured, but that's because the entire structure of this movie is designed around everything merging together and hiding the twist of the Hannah being related to them. And for that reason, there's a whole chunk of this movie where Emma Stone just isn't present, like, and she's only cut to very occasionally. And I get it, but my big question, I can't believe it's taken 25 minutes to ask, and then I'll get your feelings about all of that. But lead with this, Dan. Was the twist a twist for you, or did you see it coming?
It was indeed a twist for me. I did not see it coming.
Good.
It won.
Good. That's really good. I'm really pleased about that. Because now you know why. Did any part of you after it go, that's probably why Chris didn't want me to watch a trailer or explore the movie too much?
Oh, no, that didn't occur to me. Because is that in the trailer? They reveal that in the trailer?
No, they don't reveal it in the trailer, but I wanted you to go in as blind as possible. Because I'll be honest with you, even revealing the This Is Us, you can probably hear it in my voice if you listen back. Even when I reveal the This Is Us of it all, I'm trying to get past that quickly because obviously it's a very This Is Us style twist. Right. And I kind of wanted to... I also didn't see it coming. And when you watch the movie knowing it, they literally... The fact that they call her Hannah Banana, and I'm like, oh God, you're even inserting... you're inserting the phrasing in. Like, there are definitely hints of it, but I'm so glad that was a twist for you. I'm really pleased to hear that.
Yeah, I didn't see it coming at all. It makes perfect sense when you know who wrote it, I think. I think there's two twists in this movie. And the other one, both of them are those perfect level of twist where you can... If you're clever and observant enough, there is enough information to put it together ahead of the movie telling you. The other twist being, of course, the teacher,
because I'm watching it back going, oh, they've hidden, because they don't show her face in the first scene with him.
But they do show her bracelets, and her bracelets are what she's wearing in the date scene. If you're observant enough, if you're observant enough, you can put it together. But you'd have to be very observant. But it's there.
And the fact that so there's that, and she doesn't. They don't then go to her. They go to the head teacher. But also, what I really liked about how they hid the Hannah twist was in the scene where where Steve Carell and Julianne Moore's characters are talking outside the office, and they say, "I spoke to Nana. Yeah, me too." Obviously, in some cases, this might happen. But you do look at that scene on reflection and go, it is, if Nana is one of their parents, now they're divorced, it could be conceived as like an interesting note that they've both spoken to the character. Mm-hmm. Like, when actually, of course, it is because it's the daughter and there's references to it. And yeah, I'm so glad that twist was a twist for you, because it's very entertaining and just makes that garden scene fantastic.
Yeah, we'll come to the garden scene, because I do think there's a lot to say positive about that scene. But let's circle back to where this started, which is the characterization of the women in this movie. I do have concerns that, like, okay, I'll break it down one by one. Julianne Moore's character, Emily, not happy in the marriage. Does do the wrong thing. She cheats on Cal. But at this point, Cal's blown it. She's done. She's chosen to divorce him, right? So this notion that he's just going to chase her and chase her and chase her, that comes up later in the movie. It's not his initial reaction, but it is what he ultimately lands on, inspired by his son's own creepy obsession. She just becomes an object to be pursued, to be won in the movie. She does not have an arc beyond that, which is upsetting. Then you got Emma Stone's character, the object of Ryan Gosling's Jacob character, so she's called Hannah, we already talked about, and she is simply a prize to be won in this movie. She is the one that early on in the movie he tries his slick bullshit on her. Oh, I'm gonna buy you a drink. I'm gonna take you home. I'm gonna be a sleazy guy. And she's all like, no, thank you, no sir, don't want that. And he admittedly doesn't do. He just moves on because he doesn't give a shit. Because the amount of women he speaks to and sleeps with in this movie, clearly it's like, all right, one didn't work out. There's like 10 others in this bar. I'm gonna go find someone else. But at the same time, at the end, like, she's a prize to be won for him. Like, she admittedly comes to him rather than him pursuing her, but she's still like a hurdle for him to cross in the movie, rather than a character in her own right. And then we have Leo Tipton as Jessica, who is a prize to be won by Robbie. And the end of the movie, wow, you couldn't believe we got this far into the movie without discussing the twist. I'm surprised we've gotten this far into the movie without discussing the probable crime. If it isn't a crime, it should absolutely be a. It should absolutely be a crime. It is a crime. Okay, good.
Surely it's a crime.
Well, I mean, I don't know. It's not something I've ever thought about, Chris, because the idea of a nearly adult woman handing a nude picture of herself, which is what I assume is in the envelope, might not be, could be a sweet little letter that says, maybe one day, buddy, but not now. You're a child.
No, it's the same. It's the same envelope. It's picture shaped, and his reaction is not the reaction of "you've sent me a love letter." It's absolutely
sure. No. I look, but the movie doesn't confirm, so I'm giving them a slight bit of, benefit of just the tiniest bit of benefit of that. But the implication is pretty clear. I think that she's handed him a nude photo. I am certain that, if it isn't already, should absolutely be a crime. The movie, I cannot believe for the fucking life of me that movie got through all of the different legal, production, like executive points, and no one went, that's really fucked up. Why is that in this movie? And for anyone going, but it's from the past, it's 2011. Nah, mate, not having it. Not having it. That's bullshit. There's no way. Like in the 90s, you could go, oh, maybe, like in a Dumb and Dumber world, maybe. But this is like 10, 20 years on from that. I'm not having it. I'm calling BS. There is no way also, that was acceptable in 2011 any more so than it is now.
I hate to say this sentence. I hate to be that person. But if there's anyone out there that doesn't think this is fucked up, I'm gonna say it. Reverse the genders. It's so fucked up.
Right.
Because if you reverse the genders...
No, that's valid, man. If we ever get to Forrest Gump on here, which I assume we will, that I've got a similar complaint about a scene in Forrest Gump, where if you reverse the genders, it's like deeply upsetting. It's this weird notion that goes around that all boys want is sex. They're always going to be happy with sex. At no point can it be predatory because a boy is into it at all times, because we're just sex obsessed and we'll sleep with anything and want to sleep with anything and think about sex all the time, and that's all we want and think about. Like, that's that notion. Like, oh, it's a win for him. Teenage boy gets an older girl to give him a nude photo. That boy is winning. No, that's grooming. It's deeply inappropriate.
And the thing is, I'd still be a bit creeped out, but because I'm creeped out by the entire, anything to do with her, I think is really uncomfortable, unfortunately, including the whole Scott of it all. But I think his character's called Scott. But who's called Scott?
No, he's got Robbie, right? Is the kid?
Robbie, sorry. No, the dad.
He's called Cal.
Cal, isn't it? Yeah. Sorry, you know what that is? That's Calvin, Scott Calvin. That's what that. And also,
wow.
I've watched the Santa Claus's trailer again this morning because I showed it to Jess. This
is coming out after that's aired. I'm just going to tell you guys that we're recording this at the end of October. Which you're probably thinking, wow, it's quite far ahead. We record them in advance because sometimes we just don't have time to record, and having a buffer is nice. That means we have to catch up later in another week where we do two. But yeah, it's easier for us to have that buffer. But yeah, so we're in October right now, and we have yet to see the Santa Claus series. We're very excited about it though. Actually, if you're listening to this now and you want to know what we thought of the Santa Claus series, head over to our other podcast, because you've just listened to us review the movies. Head over to our other podcast about television, Nothing But Static, and you can, if you scroll back to an episode released sometime, presumably in December, we'll have reviewed it without question. Yeah. So, yeah.
But I'll tell you now, trailer looks fantastic, looks awesome. But you could end the Robbie her plot on the kiss on the cheek. Like, I'd still be a bit like, because the insinuation is still, well, if you end up looking like if I end up looking like my dad when I'm older. But if she gives him a little kiss on the cheek and walks away, and that is a fine resolution for that plot. It does not need her to give an underage child pornographic photos of herself.
Yep.
No movie needs that ever, I'd argue.
Yeah, 100%. And then on top of that, which is just outrageous and insane that ever got through any level of this production. That's insane. But then again, going back to the point that led us to that, what does she do in this movie, right? So her quote unquote arc is that she's in love with Cal, but he doesn't notice because he seemingly, based on what the movie presents us with, is a decent human being that wouldn't ever consider that as a thing. Like, she tries to tell him she has a crush on him at the earlier part of the movie. He literally doesn't hear her. He's just thinking about his own life and his own shit. Like, she's so far away from his mind. And to the movie's credit, tick, thank you. Yes, correct. It does sometimes happen that younger people have crushes on older people. That's the correct handling of it. Just no. It's not even part of tick. I don't want him to address it. I don't want him to go into it. I don't even want him to sit her down and be like, no. Because I just move on, please, movie. Let's not make me feel any more uncomfortable than I already do. But so her plot is that she's obsessed with, she's into Cal. But Cal's son is into her, right? And so again, she exists as an object to be sought after by Robbie. And Cal does learn from that because Robbie insisting he's going to continue to pursue her is what teaches Cal that he needs to continue to pursue his marriage. Right? So she exists again as an object to push the story forward. Not as a character in her own right, because her only character quality is that she does not enjoy being pursued by Robbie, but is herself pursuing Cal. That doesn't change, that doesn't shift throughout the movie, except for the creepy insinuation at the end that at some point Robbie will become Cal, and therefore she can have Cal through Robbie, which also, by the way, bad movie. No, bad movie. Stop it. Am I got to roll up a newspaper? Bad movie. Stop. So all the women in the movie are objectified by the script, and not in the way that you think. That's what's crazy about it, is they're both being literally objectified in the script by the other characters as objects to pursue, but the script is objectifying by turning them into narrative MacGuffins. They're the fucking Infinity Stones. They're all just chasing Infinity Stones, Chris. I don't understand how you can get to a position where you're writing this script and not see that. It's really fucking clear. No, like, when you've gone to such, like, it's not an accident that he gave Robbie such an, to me at least, interesting character arc, and Jacob such an interesting, character arc, and Cal again, like, really intricate thoughts as to why he's doing the things he's doing and behaving the way he's behaving. Yet everyone else can be just these flat objects that exist to be pursued. It's just insane. And then, as Nadia has just texted me, I don't know if she's listening to all of this, but we've both been thinking about this movie a lot, clearly. We've talked about it quite a bit this morning. She's just said, I just thought, also, Steve Carell only cares about Ryan Gosling's objectification of women when it's his daughter. Thus showing that he can only see women as people in relation to himself.
What's crazy about...
Oh, yeah, here you go. She finishes it with the object he sees Emma Stone as is daughter.
Yeah, because what's crazy about what you've just said, Dan, and you're right with everything you've said, but you've just done, 5 minutes on
Probably.
This movie talking about, objectification of women, and you've not even mentioned Ryan Gosling's character, who specifically describes them as objects, and specifically talks about, the battle of the sexes happened and we lost, but now they all want to be there. It's just like, you've not even talked about, like, the points in which a character literally sits down and explains how women are objects. Right. That's what's crazy.
Well, because the story of the movie is about that too. Like, it's about them pursuing those the I don't. Oh man. It's so messy.
And what you said earlier exactly applies to his character. We don't actually ever see, with the exception of, and it's like I said, like I said earlier, it's a great scene and a great moment. But with the exception of Cal turning to him and saying, "She deserves better than you," and him saying, "I agree," and it's a beautifully acted moment. But that is the closest we come to his character saying, I was wrong. Not, I now want something different. Not, I'm now in love and it's crazy because I thought being in love was for morons. Not any of that shit. Him saying, I was wrong to treat women this way, and now I'm in love with a woman. I realise that. And the movie needs either him or Cal to say that, because Cal doesn't say it either. He doesn't go, I've fucked up, I've been trying to be a player, it's not me. I really regret those actions. I'm sorry. He doesn't even apologise to the teacher, to the person he does it to. And if anyone's going, you guys are just as bad because you can only remember the male characters' names, that's because that's what the movie does. Like, that's the movie's fault, not ours. I'm sorry.
Well, to be fair, I can only remember character names because I've got them in front of me on IMDb. I'm not beyond Cal because it's said a lot in the movie. I would not have remembered that Ryan Gosling's character was called Jacob or that the son was called Robbie.
Jacob. Thank you. Yeah, because I'm also only name checking the characters you've already name checked because I forgot Cal's name. So this is my point. Neither of those characters that really should at some point, fucking one of them should turn around and go, specifically the objectification and our treatment of women, sleeping with them and then fucking off and leaving them and playing games with them and all of that shit, that should be something we apologise for. And I'm sorry, this movie, as Dan's already said, this movie wasn't made in the 80s or the 90s. This movie was 2011. Come on. Come on, like no.
Yeah, and
that's
it's not even like the movie doesn't create a situation where they could have that moment. Why not? Why not, Chris? After or even during, during the speech. During the speech, have him say, "And I've acted horribly. I've objectified women and mistreated women," and he looks at the teacher as he says that, and says, "And I'm sorry." Doesn't necessarily name her or call her out in the middle of the assembly to make it embarrassing for her, but they lock eyes as he says that he's done that. And we know.
Yeah.
Right? And then afterwards, him and Jacob have a moment, in that sort of after the graduation thing where they're all sort of like, all the little coders for the characters happen. Him and Jacob come across each other again, and he shakes Jacob's hand. Because of because he's the thing he said he'd never do. He'd never give him approval. Before he does that, Jacob says, "I get it now. I know why what I was doing was wrong." Just something into that akin. Not that exact dialogue. Obviously, that's bad dialogue. It's not. I've not thought it through, but properly executed dialogue where he expresses regrets over his choices. And that he's seen the error of his ways in some way, that's what triggers Steve Carell's character to shake his hand and give him his approval.
I'd go further than that. End that bar scene with Jacob. He doesn't walk. I can't remember how it does end. Whether he walks away or whether it just fades to another scene. But show Jacob go up to a woman in the bar that he has treated badly and apologise, and have Steve Carell watch him do that. And have the look on Steve Carell's face that says, "Oh shit, he might actually mean that." Like, have Jacob do it. Like, literally show an apology to, not rather than just one man saying it to another man. Like, because then that shows them both doing it. You see Jacob do it in the bar to a woman, and you see, as you've pitched, Steve Carell's character say it to the teacher character in that speech at the end.
Sure.
Like, and then I think if you have them both atone and apologise. Mm-hmm. I think that goes away to addressing some of that issue.
Yeah, and by pitching an alternate, by the way, I'm not suggesting that's exactly what they should have done. I don't think it should have necessarily exactly happened in the speech or the way either of us just described with Ryan Gosling's character with Jacob. But what our point is that by pitching alternates of how this could have been done, you'll notice that they all fit into the structure of scenes that already exist. So I guess my point isn't, they should have done it this way. My point is, it would have been easy to do. There are two idiots on this podcast just pitched two perfectly acceptable moments to fix those problems with just a few lines of dialogue in existing scenes. It's not a tearing up the script, page one rewrite situation. It's not restructuring the last act of the movie. We're literally just pitching to prove the point that it could have been done very easily. The fact that it wasn't suggests that Fogelman was not really aware of the problem. And that's upsetting. And I think he's come a long way since then. And obviously, This Is Us, one of the best shows on television in the last decade, and treated its women extremely well. You know, so I'm not suggesting that Fogelman has some nefarious motives here. I just think it was a blind spot for him, and I think he didn't see it, and I don't think he understood it, and I think, you know, that's on him really, and honestly, pretty much everyone else in this film, this development that didn't spot the problem. I'm gonna guess a lot of men worked on this movie. Let me check the directors. Yeah, men. Producers. Just curious. I can't see a list of producers on Wikipedia. I should be able to see a list of producers, shouldn't I? Where are the producers?
You should be able to.
Do I need to be on IMDb Pro to see the list of producers? That can't be a thing. Let's see a list of producers. I'll tell you what, though. Oh, here you go. All cast and crew. Wait a second. Directed by, written by, cast. Wow, did they put the producers right at the bottom? Yeah, they did. Produced by Steve Carell, Vance DeGeneres. Oh, no, okay. Oh, wow. So Denise Dinovi. Sorry, Denise, you missed this one. Jeffrey, Charlie, David. That might be Erin. So maybe there were two women involved in the production of this. On the producer side. Oh no, well, but yeah. It doesn't surprise me to see that this list is 90% men. I just feel like it says a lot about where this came from and what the thinking was and how this was missed. It's a huge problem, and you know what? Now we've talked about it, I'm even more confident in my not recommend. I don't think you should support a movie with a message like this.
Like I said, I can't get over it, and I couldn't see how either of us could get over it, and because it's just so blatant, and it is. I really do think the movie, you know, needs those apologies, those acknowledgements. And the big thing for me is atonement. I don't think anyone truly, some of the characters are unhappy for a bit, but that's not the same thing. Like you said earlier, Ryan Gosling's character realizing that he loves Hannah and this is better than what he was doing before isn't the same as him realizing that what he was doing before was shitty.
Yeah.
And for those, just to clarify, sorry to interrupt, but just to clarify that point, I don't mean, you know, him going round and, you know, sowing some seeds and you know, having sex with different people, people do people, whatever. But he specifically treats it like a game. He's specifically shown talking about women in an objectifying manner. He specifically makes it all about he treats them as manipulation. It's not him being young and fucking getting out there and flirting with a bunch of people. It's specifically the manipulation and objectification of women.
Yep. And I think, making it a game is a really important part. And I just think as well, look, they were very lucky that they cast Ryan Gosling in that role, if I'm honest, because very few actors could have said the words that this script had him saying and it not become immediately and obviously abhorrent, and gross. But because it's Ryan Gosling, who is charismatic and charming, you sort of get sucked in a bit too. And it does come back to a weird argument that I've heard a few times, this idea that, sometimes the line between, you know, a creepy, on the line, chat up line, and it being an actual, thing, is sometimes that just the attractiveness of the guy. And I have briefly witnessed this in real life. There was a guy at an old job I used to work at that was very much, you know, using cheesy lines and being very overt and a bit making it a game. And he got away with it a lot of the time because he was extremely good looking. And I did sometimes wonder if he was less good looking, would he not be in trouble more often behaving the way he behaves? But
also,
obviously,
I think.
Go on.
Here you go. Also, I think in this, it's. Sorry, you guys finish your point, and then I'll.
Well, I was just gonna say but luckily, you know, Ryan Gosling is both very good looking, so it's believable that despite his very obvious game playing that we might go, yeah, but you know, if you know, I can, in the same way that it's totally acceptable for a guy to go out there looking to find someone to sleep with, if that's what they want to do with themselves, assuming the partner is eager and consensual and happy to do that too, then great, you go have fun. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So in the movie, they make it, they part of the reason they go is because obviously Ryan Gosling is clearly an object of desire the other way too. So they do that through Hannah's friend, who's constantly going on about how attractive he is. It's clear she would jump him very easily and very happily. She's just she just wasn't targeted by him. So again, it's not really about that. But again, it does make it, I think, and may have helped make it wash over people in initial viewing how creepy what he's doing is. That it's,
but not
good-looking, charming, happy Ryan Gosling. So that I do think that helps.
It's the Ryan Gosling of it all is what I was going to say, because of course this film carries a lot in terms of the charm. It's literally got one of the most charming casts you could ever imagine. If you were to basically name a list of charming actors, you would literally put most of this cast on that list, and it makes a difference. The fact that it's sometimes with a film like this, the fact that it's Ryan Gosling, who is one of the reasons they even kind of get away with her friend's reaction to him is because that's how 100 people's 100 sexy men. Ryan Gosling's top of it. Like he's one of those figures, and I think you bring a bit of the actor to it when you watch the role. Now, obviously, I don't say this flippantly. There's some horrific claims against the man, but if this part is James Franco, we're not even reviewing this film. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a difference when it's when it's an actor, when we, the audience, and I include, men, women, because let's be honest, Ryan Gosling is a beautiful man, and I guess that's me objectifying him. But I've not even gotten to objectifying Steve Carell yet, so don't worry, that's coming too. When we, the audience, feel the way the characters, when we, the audience, feel about the actor the way the characters feel about the character, it helps. Like, it absolutely helps.
Yeah, and I think it's another thing that's weird about this movie is, and here it comes, Steve Carell, obviously also an extremely handsome man. I don't care how many movies pretend he's some weird sort of goblin man. He's not. And I'll tell you what as well, unrelated, Steve Carell only getting better with age, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So,
no, man.
So my point there isn't that, obviously, I mean, but it's this idea that whenever they cast him in these roles, like the 40-year-old virgin or this, it's that he's some sort of weird creature that's unlovable for some reason. But, like, look at him. I mean, all right, you can put him in a suit that's one size too big and some crappy trainers or whatever, but it's not changing that fact. Like, this is the male equivalent to She's All That, when they just take off the glasses and she's suddenly attractive. They take off Steve Carell's ill-fitting suit and give him a better haircut, and suddenly he's like an object of desire. That's insane to me.
That's the real reason I chose this movie. I was like, you know what? Dan's been waiting for Steve Carell to be treated like the hunk that he is for so long now that I'm gonna play this movie, and Dad's gonna be like, finally, someone else is acknowledging.
Yeah, but the movie doesn't get it straight away. Like, he starts as a weird goblin creature that's not loved by anyone or whatever. Yeah, and also like so marriages are complicated, right? And I'm not sure like. This movie's what's the word I'm looking for here? It kind of like boils it down to a really simplistic thing that like, it didn't work because he sort of stopped putting effort in, right? I admire that the movie acknowledged that it wasn't just the fault of Julianne Moore's character Emily. Pause to check IMDb. It wasn't just because she cheated on someone else. She didn't just cheat on someone else because she's like a bad person or whatever. Like, the movie acknowledges that it's fault on both sides, but it's so simplistic, right? It's, I didn't put enough effort in, so she went and slept with another guy. What were the actual problems in this marriage? Because I'm trying to figure out. The movie opens with it basically already being done, and they visually communicate that they're no longer as close as they were, as I mentioned at the beginning with the visuals, but we never really get into it. What was the actual problem? We get Ryan Gosling's character, Jacob. He implies what he thinks went wrong, and that's all we ever learn about why this marriage devolved. But if it's a movie about him winning her back, shouldn't we know why it fell apart and have him actively seek to right the wrongs? You know,
Yeah, for sure.
not just continue to be there asking, because that's not cool.
Do you think that's partly because we and you know it's a 2-hour movie, but do you think so? I'm not necessarily suggesting they don't do this, but do you think it's a reflection of the fact that like they're broken up within 5 minutes of this movie? Like that's our starting point, the story of what happens after this couple separate, as opposed to building to them separating.
I mean, obviously doing it the other way around would give you more time to explore it, but I just think if the point of the movie isn't going to be about two people trying to move on from a marriage that's fallen apart, where that's not important, if you're going to make him winning her back a part of the plot, then I think we need to explore why it fell apart, because he needs to be trying to undo the cause. That's the premise, right? The premise is he tries to be a player, tries to, put himself back out there again, learns to do that, but finds that empty and shallow, and wants to return to his love. Now, the most we get is that they were soulmates. But if they were soulmates, why did it end? The movie needs to explain, because we get Jacob's misogynistic version of events about how he was emasculating himself and he shouldn't be drinking his drink through a fucking straw and all that bullshit. Like, sorry, you as a character, we've defined that you're wrong here. We've observed you are incorrect. So I can't trust his version of events and as to why this marriage fell apart, right? So we need either one of the two characters who are actually in the marriage to express why it didn't work. Hey, here's an idea. Maybe make Julianne Moore not interested in getting back together with him at all, for reasons she makes very clear when he attempts to again. Why can't it be the point of this movie at the end is don't continue chasing them forever, because at a certain point they might not want that. Maybe she's happy and moved on. Why is she just waiting around for him to be ready to come back to the relationship? It's fucking dumb.
I don't think she is, like, she walks away from him, like, at the school when she realizes he slept with someone else, but I think you could do more, because I think you could do more with her character as well. Like, one other scene that's really nice is the scene where she phones him and asks for his help with something that she doesn't actually need his help for.
Yeah, I forgot about that scene. That's a great scene.
And it really holds on it, and we really go through the entire phone call and entire scene. More of that, because what that scene essentially is her realising that she just misses the sound of his voice. And actually, the things she thought was boring, the things like him doing the garden and doing the stuff around the home that she thought was just boring, is actually the things that she misses, because she misses him and she actually misses his way. But I am adding a lot to that. Whilst the scene is brilliant, the movie doesn't give us that context. And maybe that's deliberate and maybe it's subtle. But show us more scenes like that then. Have more of that in the film, because it's such an effective, good scene.
Yeah. And I think, the message of the movie ultimately feels like it's, I've decided you're my soulmate and I'm not going to stop trying in spite of your protests. Yeah. And for a minute, I thought we were going to end on the kid being the only one who learned a fucking lesson here. I forgot the name of the kid already, Robbie, where he goes, no, I'm not going to harass you anymore. I'm stopping with the texts. And you go, oh, thank God, someone in this movie has sense. I think he even says, I'm going to stop sending you texts that make you feel uncomfortable. And I was like, oh my God, we got there. It took the fucking 12-year-old or whatever he is, 11-year-old to fucking realise it, but one of these characters has figured out how wrong this is. Good. Okay, we did it, everyone. And then he literally goes, nah, I'm just going to wait a few years and do it again. What? No! We were so close! Movie! No! What? Oh, no, they did it. They blew it. Alright, cool. Thanks, movie. So, my question to you, Chris, is, do you think it's possible to come away from this movie with any other message than I've decided you are my soulmate and I'm not going to stop trying? Or is that really the only thing you can take away from this movie based on what's in it?
Yeah, you could loosely take away, you know, Ryan Gosling's Jacob, you could loosely maybe go, if you wanted to add texture to it, you could go, it's better to find one person and you know, make an effort with them. But he doesn't even really make an effort because the movie portrays it as being like the easiest thing in the world. Like, his only sort of real effort is, oh shit, I'm now in love and I thought that was bad in the past, but now I see it isn't. So, you know, you could add texture to it, but yeah, the basic learning seems to be soulmates be soulmates, which is so sort of oddly thin for such a sort of big, bold, beautiful idea.
Yeah. Oh man. So, I mean, the conclusion here is pretty straightforward. I think. There are so many things that work about this movie, but its ideology and its treatment of women are too big to overcome. And in reference to what I said earlier about, like, it's 2011, there's no excuse, basically. I stand by that. But for anyone thinking, well, wait a minute, this is 2011 is the tail end of the Judd Apatow era, you know, when a lot of movies with these problems exist, where the women sit around just to be objects for men to chase or to scold men for being childish. You know, the reason Bridesmaids felt like such a breath of fresh air is because the women were able to be interesting, messy characters doing funny things, not just the wives of man children going, "Oh, you guys," you know, shaking their fingers. So anyone thinking like, well, we had a lot of that at the time, and it wasn't such an insurmountable problem for many of those movies. So many of those movies are still considered classics. People still like 40-Year-Old Virgin. People still like, oh God, my brain has died. All those man-children movies. Like, what's that one with Paul Rudd and Jason Segel? I can't remember.
What? I Love You, Man.
I Love You, Man. The movies like that, which, you know,
role models as well. Role models,
yeah. All the movies from that era that were both directly involved with Apatow and Apatow inspired, all had variances of this problem. Why are they not so insurmountable? Well, first of all, there's much subtler, the issues in those movies. It is just that the women don't really get a lot to do. But the rest of the movie isn't on the subject of objectification, and then comes to the conclusion that that's fine. Because the movie never condemns it. And that's really the issue. I mean, we can sit here and talk about how the script doesn't give the women enough to do, but I think you could argue, well, it's about the men. The point of the movie is about the men in this case, in this example. So that's not the end of the world. You're right, it's not the end of the world. I'd rather it be the other way around, or a bit more mixed, but okay, fine. But it's the fact that the movie is on the subject of objectification and never condemns it. That's the real. Yeah, that's really where it really falls to pieces for me.
Yeah, and that's, you know, I don't want to do my rant again, but I completely agree. You know, the rant I made earlier of someone needs to apologise here, someone needs to atone, one of the two of them, or even really Robbie, because he doesn't go, you know what, you know, like you say, there's a brief moment where you think, oh, he's going to stop sending the creepy text, but no, just goes right back to it. It's just... Yep.
So, just to touch on a few other quick notes just about things that bothered me. Saying what a cliche does not make it not a cliche. I just want to point that out. Pointing out that your movie has a cliche in it does not undo that you've put a cliche in your movie. Just putting that out there. One thing I didn't like, Ryan Gosling's character, suddenly he starts talking to Emma Stone, and it's like, oh, look at that. The first girl I've ever wanted to talk to. So, what the implication of that for a guy who slept with thousands of women is horrendous. Because it basically means he's never done anything but objectify, to the point where he's never even listened to what they're saying before. Because there's no way, with the amount of women we see him pick up throughout the movie, and is implied that he picked up prior to the movie starting, that he just never found one that he could even have a conversation with. Yeah, I don't know about that implication.
Me neither.
Even though it leads to the really good scene where he's in the garden and can see her, and they're on the phone. Him just coming back to doing the gardening is weird. I think that's a weird a weird implication that like only men do the gardening, and now he's not there, the house will go to pot because his wife won't look after things. No, bad movie. She's perfectly capable of googling it if she doesn't know the answer. The movie wants me to think that she needs a man around the house, and I don't appreciate that either.
Yeah, and I think it's it doesn't. They don't do anything with it. Like, do you know what I mean? If they somehow worked in the notion that, because actually it's a weird way where if the movie's going, she doesn't realize he does this. Well, the fact that he's sneaking back into, do you know what I mean? We don't see her realizing he's been doing that. We don't see her. She thinks he doesn't. Okay, here's a better point on it. She thinks he doesn't give a shit anymore. He does give a shit. We know he gives a shit. He keeps nipping back and doing that. But whether he's doing it for her or the garden, we don't know. Because whether it's
Is it just that he gives a shit about the garden? Does he care about the garden more than his marriage?
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't work.
Yeah, it's very weird. Yeah. Also, there's a lot of stuff in the beginning of the movie where it's clear he's not listening to anyone. It might be just that it's selective, or might be because the beginning of the movie starts with him being told by his wife that she wants a divorce. But it's weird. He doesn't want to hear anything anyone is saying for the first like half of the movie, and I find that really strange. It's just a weird choice.
you want a quick note of and we will, by the way, I know we've been teasing it, we will talk about the garden scene. I think we're doing some negatives and then going to kind of go to that positive maybe before Trib.
The gardening scene is the last thing we'll talk about before we move on to Trivia.
Do you want to know one of my quick negative scenes?
Go on, please.
He gets the first scene we see of him having his children in his new place where he's not getting much time with him, and we there are lots of scenes in this movie, like for example when Jessica does a whole speech about not many kids are looking forward to seeing their dads, and Ryan Gosling's character says you're his hero. We don't see much of that, because one of the scenes where he has them for the first time in ages and has them at his new flat, he immediately fucks off and calls the babysitter in. What the fuck? He comes across as such a shitty dad in that scene.
Yeah. It's hard to convince me he was some great magical dad when you do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
When he immediately fucks off.
Yeah. I agree with that entirely. Also, if we're talking about like weird muddled messaging, like the movie wants me to think that Ryan Gosling's methods are broken but they work, maybe, because there's the bit where he has the conversation with Emma Stone. Hannah, sorry, and he's called Jacob. I'll remember the names eventually. Jacob and Hannah are having a conversation about. She's like, "What's the big move?" And he explains that the big move is the Dirty Dancing thing, and she goes, "That's stupid," and he goes, "I agree, but it works." Right? So the movie wants me to believe that his tactics are stupid, but they function. Right? So he Miyagi's. And by the way, thank you for sullying the Karate Kid movie. Great. That's another classic film I love that you've just, sullied with your dirty bullshit. So I'm hoping this is a movie that I shortly forget so I can go back to enjoying Karate Kid and not thinking of fucking Ryan Gosling's bullshit games. But anyway, he Miyagi's Steve Carell into understanding how to do this by making you observe a lot. And then Steve Carell goes to do it. Right, and the movie wants me to believe it works, yeah? But the very first woman he talks to, it absolutely does not work on, and he has to resort to being himself. And for a minute, I thought, oh, the movie's going to do a thing where actually the best thing for Steve Carell to do is to be himself, and maybe Cal, Jacob, maybe, so that's the thing that Cal does. Maybe Jacob will learn to be himself from Cal, and it will be more fulfilling for him, because that's what we're implying, right? By having the first attempt to copy Jacob's approach, go wrong for Cal. But actually, that's just a weird joke that she just is particularly attracted to honesty in men because so few men seem to be honest around her. And then for all the future ones that we see in the montage of him pulling various women,
dude, you're misremembering. It's way worse than that. You're not remembering a key part of that scene. She listens to him being honest and takes all that in, but the only thing she then repeats and has truly taken on board is,
right.
you think I'm the perfect balance of sexy and cute. So it's worse than that, because it does work. Because the implication is that she has only heard that one thing, and that's what's done it. It's horrific.
Yeah.
It doesn't even counter that.
But then when they go back to his like shitty little apartment or whatever, she's like, be more honest with me, and he's like, my wife slept with someone else, and she's like, and she's like into it. And I know, I get that's like a joke, right? They're playing it as a joke, but like, no. But you're right. Oh my god, I've forgotten about that. You're right. They actually are like, the movie literally says like, oh, women are so dumb. If you say a bunch of weird shit, as long as you slipped a compliment in there, that's all they'll hear. That's what it's implying. That's fucked up. I forgot about that. You're right. I had forgotten that, and that is messed up. So yeah. So the movie momentarily establishes that some of what he did, being honest, helped him in that case. Like, essentially get into the lady's pants. But then all of the subsequent ones we see is him successfully executing Jacob's skeezy bullshit. So the movie definitely wasn't trying to do that. They just got in their own way with a joke.
Yeah, and they even put a number on it. Later on, he says to
like 9 women,
Emily, his wife. Yeah, he slept. I've slept with 9. I've now had sex with 9 women.
I made a mental note. I never did it to then go back through to see if the montage shows him pulling 9.
No, I wouldn't know.
I was intrigued at that possibility.
Try and do that. Yeah, maybe.
I wondered. I just wondered if they'd like thought that through. I've got it here. I've got it in front of me. I'll count while we. Have you got any more? Do you want to talk about the scene, the garden scene?
Yeah, if you don't have any more random quick negatives. Oh, I think Kevin Bacon's character is weird. Like, they sort of make him the villain, but then we don't see any comeuppance, and there's no conclusion to that. Like, they're having a good date. Like, they seem to be getting on well. She seems a bit unsure, but she does, seemingly go to kiss him before Jessica opens the door and interrupts. So I feel like there's a real loose hanging thread with the Kevin Bacon character, and it's a weird decision to sort of make him. They should have just made him a bad guy. Like, in the date, he doesn't come across as that bad, and there's sort of the implication that they could get on. And, there are moments of him being creepy, like, him trying to get in with the son, and him being like, you left your scarf in my car the other night. Like, there are moments where he's like an archetype, but then there are also moments where he seems like, nice enough. So I think they should have gone full other guy, peers, bad guy, I think, personally, with him. I think this weird middle ground doesn't really work, because you just go, well, what's the conclusion with him then, and that story? Even if you did a fucking jokey conclusion, like have him, get with the teacher or something. Like, it just, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like, because it's a bit muddled anyway, because you never really find out, because the movie isn't interested in any of the women's feelings or thoughts, you never really find out how Emily feels actually about him. Is he another skeezy guy just trying to get into someone's trousers? In which case, you could make a case for him being a villainous character. But he's not necessarily presented that way, because we never really find out what she actually thinks about him. Maybe she does like him. I don't know. It's very.
He's fairly charming on the date. Like, and at the end, he's one of the few. Like, so at the end of the day, when he says, "I know this great sushi restaurant," and she says, "Oh, I hate sushi restaurants," and he goes, "Well, but we're not going to go there because I don't like sushi either." That's one of the few moments in this film of a man actually listening to a woman and responding accordingly. So
just look, I mean, it's a horrible thing to have detail on, but I've just checked, Chris. That montage, the way the camera, which is again another moment, by the way, where the film uses its visuals really cleverly. There's a scene where the camera just swings around in what seems like one take around the bar, and every time it moves away from a table of him talking to a woman, it clearly then becomes a different night. He's talking to a different woman on a different table. I just went through that scene, Chris. It's exactly 8 women in that sequence, plus the teacher, makes 9.
So what's the line? I've slept with 9 people in total, because there's obviously also his wife. Or is it 9 women since?
No,
then?
9 since, I think he says.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'd only ever slept with one woman. Now I've slept with another 9 or whatever it is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, there you go.
That is an impressive level. Even though it's a horrible thing to have an attention of detail to, I am mildly impressed that someone somewhere made that add up. Like, that's pretty good.
Yeah. It's such a shame, isn't it, that that's where the attention to detail has gone in this film.
Yeah, instead of giving the women thoughts and feelings of their own. Anyway, I guess one last tiny note is, while you enjoyed the scene of Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone talking and stuff, I will say that I had a slight problem in it, and I just didn't really buy it happening overnight like that for him, because I just was struggling to believe it had never happened. It couldn't have possibly ever happened before that he, spoke to one of them. You know what I mean? Like, it's strange. But yeah. And also, I don't like it when movies make people fall in love in like 2 scenes. Like, I embed it more.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I didn't view it as them falling outright in love. I viewed it as that sort of
the start. Yeah, because then he drops off the grid, and by the time we meet him again, when he's actually saying he loves her, several weeks have passed. It's all happened off screen. I guess that's fine. It's I don't know. It just feels a bit quick and convenient in the movie, but sure.
I thought it was quite nice. This Is Us style writing that at the beginning of that scene, where she does the whole "you're like a piece of art" scene, which is fairly funny. She says, "I know how the PG version of this ends.
Yes,
it ends with me falling asleep and then you putting the duvet over me gently." And I just love that the reverse of that then happens in that scene. Yeah. And I like the attempt. I don't think they do it enough, but I like the attempt at justifying why Jacob is the way he is, and the fact that when Jacob says to Steve Carell's character, "You remind me of someone," if you're paying attention, you find out in that scene that the person he reminds him of is his dad. And I think they could have done more with that, rather than it being a conversation that we fade out on, where it's sort of justifying his entire character, and we sort of just fade out and hear snippets of it, rather than actually exploring it. But there is an attempt there to go, this is why Jacob is the person he is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. All right. I think for me, this movie is summed up in, I'm not sure finding someone better is the same as seeing the error of your ways. It's a not recommend is where I've landed. I was a bit conflicted when I was coming into this conversation, because I do think the movie is entertaining. I think there are many things about it that are done well. But I think the issues are too much to surmount for a viewer in a modern context, and I think maybe even then, truthfully. Although I tried looking this movie up, expecting to find articles analysing some of this stuff and looking at some of the problematic nature of this movie, and there's nothing I could find anywhere. So everyone just sort of let this wash over them, evidently. Yeah, cool. Should we do the Triv? There's not a lot of Triv.
I think maybe we haven't done that. We haven't discussed the garden scene.
Oh God, yeah. Sorry, we got very distracted. Sorry, yes. If you get a summary from Chris too, because I just summarised the movie and then tried to move us on.
Yeah, just on that last point, I think the reason, in a way, it's almost maybe. This movie didn't become as big as, I don't know, the Breakfast Club or 16 Candles or other movies where there's been that sort of retrospective. This isn't, whilst I don't think it's an unpopular movie, and I think some scenes like the Dirty Dancing scene are remembered, and you often see the twist listed in like movie twist lists, but I don't think the movie made enough of an impact to be retrospectively analysed. As much as some of the other films that's happened to. So that would be my thought on why there's no list, because in reality, you probably can't find many articles at all about this film. Like I searched the film title on YouTube this morning because we watched it yesterday. And I wondered whether there was a review, a discussion. There's nothing. There's just clips from the movie.
Yeah, I had the same experience. I was curious.
So I think it's that.
And for a note, I would have bookmarked rather than watched if I'd found any reviews, because obviously I try not to let other reviews influence what we talk about.
Oh yeah, same. Yeah.
But afterwards, I would have absolutely.
Yeah, I was intrigued as to whether I knew there wasn't like an honest trailer or anything, but I was intrigued as to whether there was content in general about the film, and there isn't. The garden scene, whilst I think they have to strain the structure a little to get there, i.e. hiding Emma Stone's character for quite a while, the culmination of all of this coming together in that garden scene is a hell of a lot of fun. And, there's a lot of humour and really satisfying moments when you watch that unfold. I feel a little bit like, Robbie, I guess Robbie's young, maybe. But, Robbie's really angry. His dad hasn't actually done anything wrong, and it's made explicitly clear his dad had no idea what was happening with Jessica. But just the way, almost in a Fawlty Towers-esque way, the way these moments all collide in that scene is a lot of fun, I think. And everyone's performance is on top form. Ryan Gosling's giggle at the end when he says, keep it in the family. And I imagine the most fun version of that scene is when you don't know it's coming. So I imagine that scene was a real blast for you.
Yeah, it's an incredible scene because you see it. It's like that moment when you. I mean, this is the most British thing I'll say this week. The moment when you dip your biscuit in the tea, and you take it out and it breaks. Sort of happens in slow motion. You sort of see it coming. You the minute you pull it out the cup, you left it in too long. The structural integrity of the biscuit is compromised. You know it's about to go, and you've got two choices: whip it away from the teacup quickly, risking further biscuit implosion and making a mess everywhere, or letting it break off and fall into the tea, and then having to get a spoon and scoop it out and hope that there's loads of bits in your tea. That you see it coming in the brief moment before it happens. So. Yeah. What I love about that scene, and I think for anyone wondering where the fuck that analogy is going, that scene at the beginning, as it starts to come together, is you noticing the biscuit is about to break. You just go on.
What's so clever about it is there's a lot of in the writing of that scene specifically is fantastic because there's a lot of distraction going on. So he says we're going to meet her mother. And that would play on your mind were it not for the fact that then the ticking clock becomes Jessica and her dad finding the photos, clearly chasing after Cal. So then that becomes the ticking clock. And then she walks in, and we have the reveal that she's his daughter, and suddenly you forget about the ticking clock over there of the dad and the daughter, and suddenly you're of the dad and Jessica, and suddenly you're concentrating on Cal, Hannah, and Jacob. And then that unfolds, and then suddenly, the dad appears out of nowhere because you've forgotten about that ticking clock, and that gets involved, and it just all implodes.
Yeah, because it's like everyone's yelling at everyone at the exact same time. That's basically it. And then, the third element is obviously David Lindhagen showing up. But he shows up when it's already gone a bit insane. So you've got all your plots basically colliding in one moment and coming together in a way that, one, you won't expect, two, is quite quite satisfying, just narratively, that they've all been weaved together so cleverly that they could all come together in a way like this and not feel broken and wrong and weird and forced. The fact that the plots all come together this way and feel completely natural as they come together is remarkable. We talk a lot about having a bit of a sense for the hand of the writer. We've described it as on here, but it's that notion of when you can feel the writer forcing events to occur in a way that's not very natural because he or she wants X to happen at the end of the movie, right? This is both a surprise from a narrative perspective in the very obvious direct twist sort of sense. When I say what's surprising about that scene? Well, we find out about Emma Stone and the secret of her character Hannah being both the daughter of one of the leads and the love interest of the other at the same time. But it's also surprising because you just don't expect all of the stories to because it's almost got, sometimes this movie has got that Love Actually vibe where the stories all feel quite disparate from each other. Like, Hannah as a character, and it's part of the nature of hiding this surprise, is just always having scenes that feel so unrelated to everything else. But that's also sometimes true of Ryan Gosling's character. That's also true of Steve Carell's character. So, it's a movie that feels very segmented in some ways. So seeing it all come together is both satisfying from the reveal of Hannah's character's backstory, but also just narratively like a magic trick. You just sort of go, oh wow, these things were all actually related the entire time. You just didn't know it. That's really clever. And then to make that scene not just good because of that, but then make it a really entertaining scene in itself, with lots of really funny moments and some of my favorite character moments. Like I said, Jacob's character punching David Lindhagen, saying "You hurt my friend" is a really great character moment. So it's all happening, man. And also, it's one of those. I tell you what's really hard to do: a misunderstanding where somebody's going to punch someone else. Because at the end of the day, often you just think like, well, wouldn't you just say, no, you've completely misunderstood this, and it would end the tension. But because of the way it all unfolds, Jessica's dad, who is apparently called Bernie, cool, played by John Carroll Lynch, who does a great job, by the way, in this scene. All the cast, top to bottom, there's no one bad in this movie. Even like Josh Groban, who's clearly just a little cameo, and it's like the first time he's done a movie. It does a really good job in this movie. Everyone's good. There's no bad actors in this movie, I don't think. When he's arriving on the scene with such rage, such understandable rage, you're not going, why is he not listening and realizing the truth? The way it's all set up and the way it all happens so suddenly, there's no time for anyone to think or discuss this. So it leads to it in a way that again feels very organic, very believable. Yeah, so it's all very clever.
You want to know another attention to detail thing that you wouldn't have picked up, but that's like, how have you put the attention to detail here? When he bumps into him in the store, when he's buying the wood to make the windmill and crazy golf stuff, that plays as a scene of, you rejected me, but I'm moving on and I'm happy, and it plays as that. Actually, that scene exists to let that character know that he's going to be at that house later, because he says, I'm doing some stuff at home. And that's how, because otherwise,
oh shit,
he would presumably go looking for him at his new flat or something, or that bar or whatever. Mm-hmm. But literally, that scene actually exists so that Cal can let that character know where they're going to be later, so that he knows where to find him.
That's great. Yeah, so that scene is a brilliant piece of cinema. It's that scene is great.
Just even, and like you say, because everyone's just on fire throughout the whole film, but it's it's the little moments in that scene, like the interaction of what's Julianne Moore's character's name?
I want to say Emily, but let me look it up.
Yeah, Emily seeing Jacob for the first time, and even though all of this is going on, Jacob still finds himself laying on the charm about how they look alike. And that's the other thing. That's the other thing about how well the twist is hidden. Julianne Moore and Emma Stone do look alike. You absolutely believe that they're mother and daughter. The fact that little girl who, while she only has a couple of lines, the whole thing of, she said, if it goes wrong, I'm going to go upstairs and look and watch TV. And then when it starts imploding, she turns to Robbie and goes, can I go upstairs and watch TV? And does that. In the... Emma Stone's character being, when he sort of is talking about him being a womanizer, and Emma Stone going, oh, you guys really do know each other then. There's so many little moments in that scene, which, is actually that scene represents the good things about this movie and the best of the movie coming through. But like Dan, just before we then move on to Trib, just to reiterate, my feelings as Dan did, I absolutely cannot get over the fact that the movie's about objectifying, and no one really atones for that or acknowledges that that's wrong, or shows that they've learned that specific lesson. And I cannot get over that. And as entertaining as that scene is, as great as the cast are, as funny as it is in places, I can't forgive the movie for that crime, and therefore can't recommend it.
Yep.
And it's a real shame, because this was a movie that I think I've put this movie on just to like put it on like a couple of times. I've not watched it in a good few years, but I can't see myself doing that again. I can't see myself going, oh, I'll give that a watch. Because
Isn't
I won't
it funny
be able
though
to,
what the difference is between like watching a movie just at home in your own, without really taking it in or like concentrating or like.
I'd like.
We talk about it a lot. That critical eye really can make you see stuff in a movie you hadn't previously noticed. It's really interesting. Doing this podcast has been an illumination in many ways. Like even like I would have said before watching it that like Hook, for example, was a really joyous film. With like very few flaws, but watching it, I mean, we literally, I chose Hook as the antithesis to a bad movie. I was like, I'll watch a good one next time, and I was wrong. Like there were problems with Hook. It was not a perfect movie, and it's just funny how sometimes these things are better in your mind. Than they turn out. Shall we?
Let's trim it up!
I'm going to give you some very short, because no one cares about this movie, trivia. They struggled to come up with a title for this movie. It had various working titles. No one was ever content that was going to be the title, to the point where on set, the filmmakers were offering a free iPad to whoever on set came up with a better title for the movie than the one they had. Steve Carell has said that he hates the title of the movie, stating that he couldn't imagine a group of college guys saying 5 tickets to Crazy Stupid Love Please, which is a weird way to phrase it, but I see what he's saying. He thinks the title...
Yeah, especially as actually, that's kind of the audience for the film, to some degree.
Well, yeah, because we just talked about how misogynistic this movie is and how much toxic masculinity is in this movie and how much it was the women, yet it's marketed... It ends up being sort of marketed as a rom-com, which are traditionally marketed at women. And I do think that title would imply that's what they were going for, but that's the wrong audience for this movie, I'll tell you. So Steve Carell says he preferred the title The Wingman, which he did feel was boring, but more accurately described the film. So
yeah, I'd go with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. This is a fun one. I like this. So while rehearsing the scene where Ryan Gosling lifted Emma Stone in the air, Dirty Dancing style, Stone did not realise she actually had a massive phobia of being lifted high up into the air until the first time Gosling did it. She had a full meltdown. Gosling himself has since described it as like a possum falling out of a tree and trying to scratch your eyes out. Afterwards, she ran away crying and led in a bed and watched Labyrinth to calm down. She has since clarified her phobia clearly she thinks came from when she was 7 years old and fell off the high bars in gymnastics and broke both her arms. They ended up using a body double for the lift in the actual movie, but they did use a recording of Stone's real screams.
Jesus. Wow.
I'm assuming when they say they used a recording of Stone's real screams, I'm assuming they don't mean from the rehearsal where she lost it. I'm assuming they then said, give us a reaction to being lifted up like that, and she gives the on a mic somewhere. Like I don't think that means they had audio of the rehearsal that they used. I could be wrong, but I don't think that's what that's implying. But anyway, I was annoyed about this trivia, Chris, because I thought I'd worked out trivia for myself, and I was really pleased, and then it was just in the main IMDb trivia.
Yeah, that's annoying.
So I was really pleased and I was really sad. So I was looking up some of the ages of some of the characters in this movie, because I was just like not convinced of some of the age differences that they were implying. And Leo Tipton, who played I want to say Jessica, who played Jessica, the sort of high schooler, the Robbie was obsessed with, the babysitter. She is only 2 days different in age from Emma Stone.
Oh, wow. Jesus.
Yeah, they were both born in 1988, a few days apart in early November. And I figured that out looking that up, because I was just convinced there was either someone was playing young, someone was playing old. Turns out they were both in their early 20s during the shooting of the movie, and Emma Stone was playing older, and Tipton was playing younger. So yeah,
there you go.
There's also in the film, they make a real point that Cal and Emily had Hannah when they were teenagers, but in real life, it was very realistic that Steve Carell and Julianne Moore could be Emma Stone's parents. Carell is 26 years older than Stone. So he would have been 26.
Because they say we had her when we were 17, so Steve Carell's also playing like 9 years younger than he is then.
It seems that way, yes.
Mm.
Yeah. Wait, I've reordered these and it's confused me. Oh, here we go. So the screenplay for this film. So if anyone who doesn't know about this, there's a thing called the Blacklist, and it's basically a website, and there are industry people that work on it, and you submit your script for a fee, and they read it and give you a score, and it's become kind of, certainly for a while, it was like if you got a good score on the Blacklist, you could legitimately find representation. You could legitimately get your movie in front of really important people. And many movies, especially in the sort of late 2000s, early 2010s, were being made off of getting a good score on the Blacklist or being featured on the Blacklist's most... how do they describe it? It's like they do a yearly best unproduced screenplays list, the Blacklist. Yeah. So at the end of each year, they basically say, I don't know what the number is, but these are the 10 scripts that were not produced this year that are the best, basically, that we received. And that often starts bidding wars if you get on that list. Certainly back in the day. I don't know if it holds the same sway these days. I hear less and less stories about the Blacklist leading to produced movies. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if there was like if you know the results were not as good as they wanted. Maybe they did a bunch of these movies and none of them really did, you know, break away or whatever. But this movie was one of those movies. It was the screenplay for this film was featured in the 2010 Blacklist of the best unmade scripts of the year. So that's what got this script in front of people and got it produced. So yeah, there you go.
Nice.
Yeah, kind of. It's fun. I like the idea of the Blacklist myself. I like the idea that they that writers who are not properly represented at this point can submit a script, and if it's genuinely very good, can find themselves, in front of real producers talking about whether it gets made or not. I think that's crazy, and that's really good. I will say in recent years though, it has come under some scrutiny because it feels like maybe they're overworking the people who do the reading. Because there was a guy who submitted his same script like 3 or 4 times, got a different reader every time. They're all anonymous, by the way, the people that rate the movies, and he got wildly different scores. And it was just kind of like, actually, is this maybe not as reliable as we thought as a way of gauging a script? So I don't know if that's part of the reason they don't do it as much these days. But yeah, interesting to say the least. The second line on the nameplate that Emily Weaver's desk says "associate" to the vice president, which is obviously a reference to The Office that has a running gag about Dwight Schrute being assistant to the regional manager rather than assistant regional manager. Yeah, fun little reference. Jacob criticizes Cal. Jacob criticizes Cal for the imagery involved in him drinking his drink through a straw. A small detail is that at the mall restaurant where Richard toasts Hannah, only Hannah and Liz drink directly from their glasses. All the men at the table are drinking through straws. Sure. I don't know what that's saying. I mean, it's a nice detail, I guess, but I don't know what they're trying to tell me about those men. Something I'm potentially not comfortable with, but whatever.
In a way, what would have been nicer is if Hannah was drinking through a straw, because that would have been a hint.
Yes, yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right. It would have been a hint to her parentage. You're right. That would have been fun. Yeah. When Ryan Gosling and Steve Carell discuss getting Mr. Miyagi'd, Gosling grabs Carell's nose, squeezes it playfully and says honk, which is actually a second direct reference to The Karate Kid, particularly part 2, when Miyagi honks the nose of an opponent instead of striking him. Great scene from Karate Kid 2. Once again, thank you, movie, for ruining The Karate Kid for me. I've still not seen the most recent season of Cobra Kai. I don't know if I'm going to be able to stomach it right now. It's not that bad, but I am really sad that this movie has so much Karate Kid stuff in it. I love the Karate Kid. I at some point I will do that on here because I don't believe you've seen it. Am I right in saying
that? Yes, you are right in saying that.
So I'm excited to do that at some point, but I might need a bit of space.
Fair enough. That's fair.
The part where Marissa Tomei's character props her leg on the coffee table and you can see Steve Carell framed from between her legs is an homage to The Graduate. I spotted that. I thought that was a neat little visual touch.
Yeah,
It doesn't really say anything about anything. It's just a little homage, which is fine. And then finally, Marissa Tomei's character is revealed to be Robbie's English teacher. Oh, we've already covered this one. Revealed to be Robbie's English teacher when she first meets Cal at the bar. Because she is wearing the same bracelet seen when she's writing on the blackboard earlier in the film. Now, I did try to find this movie, Chris, on the Internet Movie Car Database to just name a car or two that's in this movie. There are several cars in this movie. I'm not very good at spotting makes and models of car. I can sometimes figure out the make. Oh, that's a BMW. That's a whatever. But I'm not very good at the model.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very reliant on the Internet Movie Car Database to do Cars Exist, Chris. This movie made such little impact, it seems, that no one bothered to put it even on there. It's not even listed on there. It's not like someone put the movie into the database and no one added any cars that they spotted. No one's even bothered.
Well, in that case, because we still need to do the noise, so in that case, I'll take over the segment for this week. Right,
Sure.
You ready, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's time for our world-famous segment, Cars Exist. There are cars in this movie. There you go.
There are cars in this movie. Thank you everyone for that, for listening. Very quickly. Budget, 50 million. So double that for marketing is the usual rule of thumb. Roughly. It's not exact science. I don't want anyone in the comments being like, that's not how it works. Estimate-wise, they a lot of people have said that it's roughly half. Doubled. If you do that. So let's say they spent $100 million on this movie. It made, Chris, $145 million. So, theoretically, assuming that no shenanigans occurred, weird Hollywood accounting, it made about $45 million for Warner Brothers. Which isn't bad as a return goes. 45 mil?
No. Especially for a movie no one really remembers.
Yeah. Domestic opening 19 million, not bad. Not good either, but not bad.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Sweet.
So, do you want to do where we're going next, Chris?
Yes, I would love to know where we're going next, Dan.
So, it's Halloween at the moment, mate, and for us listening, and we've not gotten to review Halloween because we're recording these in advance. There's no rewind review going up during Halloween other than a Harry Potter one, so we didn't get to do a Halloween movie this year. Now, we're obviously not going to do an outright Halloween movie for the next movie, but there is a movie with horror elements that I would like to do. One, because I'm in the mood for something spooky, and as we head into 2023, following the current trend, Chris. As we're in 2023 now, I assume for listeners. Oh, actually, I'm not sure when this airs in relation to that. I guess we're in January, because obviously we've just done Santa Claus. As we reach the new year, Chris, every year for the past few years has just seemingly been worse than the previous one. Just seems to be an ever-ending spiral of shit show, right? So let's bring in the new year with a horror film. But not an outright horror film, something a bit more unique. And also, I was thinking about that, but I was also thinking about the fact that I've yet to choose a movie in the same date range as this. You've now chosen two movies from 2010 onwards, and I've chosen 0 movies in that date range. So I found a movie, Chris, that in the UK released the exact same year as Crazy Stupid Love, that I thoroughly enjoyed at the time, but have not seen since, and has a vaguely horror theme. So this week, we're going to be watching Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Oh, okay, nice, cool.
Now, for anyone wondering, what the fuck is that movie? You can listen next week and find out. But I do recommend. I'm okay. Let me put it this way: I'm confident I'm going to come out of this still having liked this movie. So I'm going to go ahead and suggest people watch it ahead of the podcast, which is a bold move.
That is a bold move. Yeah, that is very bold.
That's how confident I am. Stars Alan Tudyk and Tyler Labine. I'm very excited to watch this movie because I'm also going to work under the assumption, Chris, you basically have either never heard of or know almost nothing about the movie.
I've heard of the movie. I've not seen the movie, but I have definitely heard of it for sure.
Okay. With that in mind then, Chris, may I ask you, as you asked me, to not look into the movie at all?
Yeah, fine.
Don't watch a trailer. Don't watch nothing. I want you to experience it as cold as you can, if that's okay.
Will do.
I think it might even be on Prime in the UK, which might make this much easier for us. I'll verify that later, but.
Yeah, as this movie, if for some reason this podcast has made you want to watch this movie, it is on Prime in the UK at least.
It's so Tucker and Dale vs Evil is £2 on Prime. It's a paid for one, so we'll find it. We'll figure it out. But anyway, yes. So yeah, I'm excited to watch it. It's the first time I picked a movie from that era, and then we'll do. I think for the last 2 movies of this season, we'll probably do some more like sort of classic-y. Well, I assume we're going to be venturing backwards in time to do some more classic nostalgia affair to end the series on. So,
yeah, I was trying to work out, what was the maths you worked out on Good Burger? Like, you worked out that it could align nicely with the last episode, I think, of this series.
Exactly that, yeah, exactly that. So we could do Good Burger as the very last episode of this series if you felt so inclined. So I think there's 4 left. Where are we at? Let me check.
Yeah, I don't think my next choice is the last choice, but yeah.
So I've just chosen this. Then you get 2 more choices. So you get one after this. Then I get 1 more, and then you get. So you've got 2 more choices now, and I've got 1 more choice.
Yeah, cool. And yeah, I think we'll go further back in time. But that'll
take us to the 31st of January.
Cool. And I still maintain, you can easily have I've got nostalgic for movies even more modern than this. Like, nostalgia is the brief. Like, ideally, movies from our childhood and stuff should be the main thoroughfare, as it has been. Like you say, there's only really been now 3 choices that go outside of that in however many episodes. But I think the odd choice outside of that sort of 80s, 90s period is allowed for sure.
Yeah, as long as we feel like we can justify it in the moment and the way it. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, right. I'm so desperate for the toilet that I've got 2 options here, Chris. I can either fly through this quicker than I've ever done it, or I can let you tell people where they can find us while I pee. Your call.
Oh no, I think it'll be way more entertaining for you to fly through it quicker than you've ever done it, Dan. And that's exactly what you would make me do. So go for it.
Perfect. All right. You can get us all the usual places. I'm on Twitter at Dan Doolan. Chris is on Twitter at C Billingham. You can support us on Patreon for less than $1 a month. You can get episodes of this and Analysing Avatar 1 whole week early. You can get us on YouTube, youtube.com/NothingButStaticUK, where you can like and subscribe and comment all you like. If you've got a comment that won't fit into a tweet or a YouTube comment, you can always email it to us, mail@nothingbutstatic.co.uk. You can also support us in all the other ways that are obvious, such as telling a friend or continuing to listen. We like that too. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening.
I've been I've been Chris Billingham.
I've been Dan Doolan.
We don't do it that way round, but well, you can finish the joke, right?
Do we?
Do we? No, I say. Oh yeah, you're right. I've been Chris Billingham.
I've been Dan Doolan.
And this review has been rewound.
Jesus, you're just trying to extend this, mate. I need a pee.
Go pee.
I'm going to pee. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.